boys and girls, and welcome back to my classroom. This is our final lesson today from school. I hope that you're all having a wonderful week, and I am so blessed to be with you again. I am so grateful that we've gotten to do this for the last 5 weeks, and I hope today is a treat for you as well. We're going to be talking about someone today that made a difference in our world. So far we have talked about Anne Frank to start it off, and we talked about the hidden figures, and we talked about the Statue of Liberty, and we talked about Benjamin Franklin in the colonial time period last week. And today I'm going to talk to you about someone from current day. So we're not going to be using primary sources from the past today. Instead, I'm going to be talking to you about someone that's alive now, that's really made a difference in our world. And I hope that what happens today and what we talk about today will inspire you to make a difference in our world too. All right, so I have a couple of vocabulary words to go over with you because I'm going to be talking to you about someone that won the Nobel Peace Prize. And so the Nobel Peace Prize is an award that's given out every year to someone that makes a difference, that really works for fraternity between nations, meaning does something for the good of the world and is trying to make the world a better place. So I hope that as we go through the lesson today, you see the things that she did to make a difference in our world and the reason that she received the Nobel Peace Prize. She's actually the youngest person to ever receive that prize. All right, another one that we're going to talk about at the end today is a pen name. And a pen name is when you take on an assumed name that's used by a writer instead of their real name. So sometimes writers do that just to change things up, like Dr. Seuss used a pen name. Dr. Seuss was not his name. But lots of people do that if there's a chance of danger. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the young lady I'm going to introduce to you used a pen name for her own safety because it was unsafe for her to use her name. All right, so who I'm going to be talking to you about today is Malala. And Malala was a young girl that lived in Pakistan. And so here on the map, you can barely see Pakistan as this yellow piece of the map. And so we are over here in Oklahoma, in North America, and all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, you have Africa and Europe and Asia, and Pakistan is in Southeast Asia. And so it's right here, a small country compared to North America's United States. But that is where the story takes place that we're going to be talking about today. And if I zoom in on Pakistan a little bit more, you can kind of see it's near India and Afghanistan and China. And we're really going to be talking about Swat Valley today, which is this little red square here. And Swat Valley was the part of Pakistan that Malala lived in. You can see that it was very close to Afghanistan, and that kind of plays a part in the things that happened to her in her country. Now, before I start reading to you, I wanted to share a little bit about Pakistan. My sister-in-law is from Pakistan. She lived there until she was 18. So I called to talk to her yesterday and kind of ask her some questions about what life was like growing up in Pakistan and going to school there. And she said that compared to the United States, it was kind of hard for her to compare because she didn't go to school in America. However, she has children, and one attends school, is school age, and so she can kind of compare what his experiences are to what she experienced when she lived there. And she just talked about how it was a very different schooling experience. In Pakistan, all of the schools were divided by gender. So you had girls' schools and boys' schools. So she went to an all-girls school. She said there were some co-ed schools, but they were even usually divided by buildings, a boy building and a girls building. So that's a little bit different than in America. We have gender-specific schools, but it's not as common here. She said that there was a lot more discipline there. They were a lot more strict with their students, and the teachers would discipline you if you weren't doing the right thing in a more strict manner than we do here in America. She said the curriculum was a little bit different. It focused a lot more around their religion and social studies and geography of the world than we do here. So she also said there was a lot more homework. So if you miss homework, maybe you would like school in Pakistan. I don't know. All right, so here's a picture of Malala, and that's who I'm going to be reading to you about today. She was a young girl that made such a difference in our world. So the book I'm going to be reading to you is called Malala's Magic Pencil. And this is a book that's written by Malala. She has written several books. I'll show you some of those titles in a minute. But Malala wrote this, and you will notice that you can kind of tell on the cover, but you can tell better on the pages inside. The illustrator created these images that are kind of an iridescent gold color. And we're going to be talking about a magic pencil. And all the things that Malala imagines the magic pencil drawings are all done in this gold, shiny print. So I think you'll be able to pick up on that really quickly. So, do you believe in magic? Here you can see the golden flowers there coming from her pencil and making a path out. When I was younger, I used to watch a TV show about a boy who had a magic pencil. If he was hungry, he drew a bowl of curry, and it appeared. If he and his friends were in danger, he drew a police officer. The boy was a little hero, always protecting people who needed help. How I wanted a magic pencil too. How handy would that be to have a magic pencil that anytime you needed something or you wanted something or you wanted to help people, you could just draw it with a pencil and it would become real. So kind of look at her living room here. It looks a little bit different than some of your living rooms maybe. She's got a TV. I'm sure some of you have TV and a rug and a couch and chair. If I had a magic pencil, I would use it to put a lock on my door so my brothers couldn't bother me. How many of you would like a lock? Stop time so I could sleep an extra hour every morning. That would be me. Erase the smell of the trash dump near our house. So she could also use her pencil to erase bad things. So it looks like she lived near something that stunk, the trash dump. And I would use it to make other people happy. I would draw the most beautiful dresses in the world for my mother. The best buildings in the valley for my father, so he could open many schools where children would study for free. So her father was a principal, and that becomes a pivotal point in Malala's life, that her father was a principal and he really supported education for girls. And so that's going to kind of propel her in the direction that she goes in her life. She would draw a proper ball, so my brothers and I no longer had to play with an old sock stuffed with rubbish. Every night before I went to bed, I wished for a magic pencil of my own. And every morning I would wake up and check my cupboard, but the pencil was never there. One day I was throwing away potato peels and eggshells at the dump. I was wrinkling my nose, swatting away flies, and making sure I didn't step on anything dirty in my nice shoes, when I saw a girl about my age sorting trash into piles. Nearby, boys were fishing for metal scraps using magnets on a string. So here's Malala in her nice, clean dress, and she's standing there looking, and these children look very ragged. They have dirt on their faces, and their clothes are unclean. And they're fishing through the trash looking for things. When my father returned home from work, I told him what I'd seen. It made him sad. "Abba," I said. "Yes, Johnny," he said back. "I always liked when he called me dear one. Why haven't I seen that girl in my class?" "Because," he said. But he didn't finish right away. "Because, Johnny, in our country, not everyone sends their daughters to school, and some children must work to support their family. Those boys will sell the metal scraps they find. If they went to school, their families would go hungry." School was my favorite place, but I had never considered myself lucky to be able to go. How many of you, not being able to go to school for the last several weeks, would feel lucky to get to go back to school, even for a day, just to get to have recess and lunch with your friends and to play? Some of you might be able to relate to that. My father had always said, "Malala will live free as a bird." Now I wondered how free I'd truly be. That night, I thought about families who didn't have enough food, and the girl who couldn't go to school, and even about how when I was older, I would be expected to cook and clean for my brothers, because where I came from, many girls weren't allowed to become what they dreamed of. So in parts of Pakistan, it was, frowned upon for you to become anything other than serving your family. So you might not be able to get a job or a career that you want. I knew then that if I had the magic pencil, I would use it to draw a better world, a peaceful world. So you can see over here is kind of the reality of what her town or city or village looked like. And over here is kind of what she imagined it looking like if she could. First, I would erase war, poverty, and hunger. Then I would draw girls and boys together as equals. Over the next few years, instead of wishing for a magic pencil every night, I worked hard in school every day. I wanted to be one of the top students in my class. But soon, powerful and dangerous men declared that girls were forbidden from attending school. They walked the streets of our city now. They carried weapons. So you can kind of see, like I said, she lived close to Afghanistan, and there were some bad people there. And they came over into Pakistan and started taking over and making rules that were not nice. One by one, girls stopped coming to school. Abba, where are all the students? They don't feel safe here anymore, Johnny. How could a few men stop all the girls in our valley from going to school? If more people knew what was happening to us, I thought, they might help. So notice that her classroom is now almost empty. There's just 3 of them left. Wishing wasn't enough. Someone needed to speak out. Why not me? I want you to really think about that as we go through the lesson and even this summer. Why not me? Why can't you be the one to have a positive influence or do something kind to change your world or your community or your household? So really think about why not me. I wrote about what it felt like to be scared to walk to school and how some of my friends had moved away because of the threat they faced in our city. I wrote about how much I loved school and how proud I was of my uniform. Once I started writing, I didn't stop. I wrote speeches and traveled around my country, sharing my story. I even talked to a reporter from a famous international newspaper. People actually wanted to learn about my life. I spoke for all the girls in my valley who couldn't speak for themselves. My voice became so powerful that the dangerous men tried to silence me, but they failed. You can kind of tell in the picture, but I don't know how well you can see. She's in a hospital gown and she has a hospital bracelet on. And this is because of her speaking out against the rules that they were making, they attacked her and they tried to hurt her. But they were not successful. She, although hurt, she lived to tell about it and she got better. And now my voice is louder than ever. Louder because people have joined me. And together we make a chorus, standing up for what we believe. We raise our voices for those in need, help people in danger if they are an ocean away. Think of the world as a family. You can kind of see this crowd of people, and they all have signs about education is a right. And Malala, you are the pride of Pakistan. Education for all. Do you still believe in magic? I do. I wrote alone in my room, but people all over the world were reading my story. Millions now know it and help me spread my message of hope. I had at last found the magic I was looking for in my words and in my work. And there's girls going back to school. I am Malala. I've always wished I could make the world a more peaceful place. And every day I work to make my wish come true. And this is a famous quote by Malala. She has said, and it's become very famous, and it says, "One child, one teacher, one book and one pen can change the world." Maybe you could be that child with a book and a pen, or something that you do to help change the world for the better. So at the back, there's a note from Malala, and it says, "As a child, I used to watch a TV show called Shaka Laka Boom Boom. It was about a boy named Sanju who could make anything real by drawing it with a magic pencil he found. Sanju and his friends were always getting into trouble, and the magic pencil would help them get out of it. But my early childhood was mostly trouble-free. I grew up in the beautiful Swat Valley in northwest Pakistan, the sister of 2 cheeky little brothers, and the only daughter of a resilient mother and inspiring father who was a school principal. Trouble came to my valley when I was 10 years old, and girls were forbidden from going to school. At first I thought, what can I do? I'm just a child. As I watched my father speak out for girls' education, I realized I had a voice too, and I wanted to use it. I believed then, as I believe now, that all children should have access to education. When we are young, we feel powerless. We rely on adults to do the serious work. However, when real danger threatened my right to go to school, I felt stronger than ever, and I found power in my voice. Once I wished for Sanju's magic pencil. Now I know that when you find your voice, every pencil can be magic. I hope that my story inspires you to find the magic in your own life and to always speak up for what you believe in. Magic is everywhere in the world. In knowledge, beauty, love, peace, the magic is in you, in your words, in your voice. And that's signed Malala. So that's her message to you. And I hope that you take something away from that story and that you learned about the positivity that you can put out into the world. So she came to public attention. She wrote for the BBC Urdu about life under the Taliban. That's the bad people that were in Afghanistan that came into Pakistan and kind of took over Swat Valley. She used a pen name for her original writing. She used the name Gul Makai. The Taliban had forbidden girls in her region from going to school, and so she began to speak out publicly about girls' education in her community and the value of that. And so she was targeted by the Taliban, and on her way home from school one day, they attacked her. But she miraculously survived, and she now lives in England, and she travels the world speaking and talking about the importance of education, and she's in college. She started the Malala Fund, which has opened schools for girls all over Pakistan, as well as Lebanon and Jordan for Syrian refugees. And so there's over 130 million girls who are out of school. Many of those are refugees. So she was honored with lots of awards, and then she was the youngest ever recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014. All right, so a few things. Here are Malala's other books. She has written several others. There's one that's her autobiography, one about the girls around the world that are out of school and the things that she has done for them. And then there's one about her story of standing up for girls' rights. So lots of things that she has done as far as publishing books for others to read. So those are great resources you could find at your library or online if you wanted to read more about Malala. There's also a documentary movie about her life that you could check out and watch to learn more about her. Okay, so my question for you today is, if you had a magic pencil, how would you make the world a better place? I would love to know, what would you choose to draw if you had that magic pencil? I can think of lots of things that I would love to draw to make this a better place. And what can you do this summer to make a difference, to be a positive light in your community or your household or your town? Is there something that you can do at home? So I'd love for you to post on our Facebook group if there's something you come up with that you would like to draw or something you can really do, even without a magic pencil. So what I did is I created a kindness club, and I hope you'll join my club. So all you have to do to join is do something kind for others this summer and try to make a positive difference in the world. So I made a little calendar, and it just has ideas on it. You don't have to do all of them, but it's just a place for you to get started with you and your family, come up with things that you could do for others. Something like mail a letter to a friend, or make some bookmarks and donate to a little free library in your community. Or maybe you make a list of all the things you're thankful for and share that with others. Maybe you make a blanket fort and share it with your siblings, even though they kind of annoy you sometimes. Or maybe you plant some seeds and grow something to share with a neighbor or with a friend. So that's going to be available on the Facebook page. I'll post the little calendar that you can download if you want it, or maybe you do something else. But ultimately, I would love for you to post pictures all summer and share with me what kind of things are you doing to share that positive message like Malala did. Maybe you use a pencil and actually write something positive. Or maybe you just do a favor or a kind deed for someone, a random act of kindness. All right, so I do have a science experiment for you today. And this one is called the magic pencil. So I think that you will see that I based it on Malala's book, The Magic Pencil. And so all you need for this experiment is a plastic bag, just a Ziploc baggie. You need some water, and you need some pencils. Now, these pencils, it helps if they are rounded pencils, not the kind with the flat sides, but a round pencil works best for this experiment. So all you're going to do is take your Ziploc bag, and you're going to put some water in it. I would fill it, halfway to 3/4 full. Once you have some water in there, you're going to seal it up. Now, I have a bucket over here, just in case, but I'm going to poke pencils through my bag. You might be thinking, Miss Owens, that's going to make a huge mess. However, notice that this is called the magic pencil experiment, so I think you can probably infer what's going to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our pencil and we're going to stab it through this bag. Now, you don't have to do it very hard. You can just kind of push on the bag and kind of twist the pencil as you do. And notice that my pencil went all the way through the bag and no water is dripping. Now, you can do it several times. And just keep pushing pencils through the bag over and over. And I still don't have any leaks. Do one more right there. All right, so as you can see, I pushed all those pencils through there and no water is dripped out. Pretty cool, right? So you might be thinking, well, how is it that that works? Well, the plastic that this baggie is made of is called a polymer, and it is a low-density polyethylene polymer. You don't really need to know that, but the polymer is a widely used packaging material that we use for lots of things because it's durable and it keeps things sealed. It's cheap to make and lightweight. So the way that I found it explained the easiest is the polymers that hold this bag together are kind of like spaghetti. If you cook spaghetti, take that pencil and you kind of put it through the strands of spaghetti. And so all you're doing is when you push that pencil through, the spaghetti kind of spreads out enough for you to fit the pencil through. So the molecules that make up the bag are spread out just enough that when you push the pencil through, it creates like a seal around the pencil, kind of like just sealing up that hole. Now, I will warn you, when you take the pencils out, it will leak. So make sure you do that over the sink or outside, not, in the house. All right, so that is the magic pencil experiment. If you try it, make sure you share it on the Facebook group. I'd love to see what you come up with. I've read that you could do it with different types of bags. You could try different sizes, or even a Walmart sack should work as long as it doesn't already have a hole in it. And you can try it with sharpened pencils. All right, before I leave you today, a couple other resources that you might want to check out, and I'll share these on the Facebook group. But there is a brain pop video. Malala. Link doesn't want to work sometimes. There it goes. So I will share this on there, but it's a really good kid-friendly video about Malala's life. It's pretty short. Most kids are familiar with brain pop and how that works. So it has a little video and a little quiz you can do. And it also has some activities with the video that you can do as well. So it's just another resource if you want to learn more about her life. It's a really good video about the things that happened to her in more detail than the book I read you today. All right, and then the other resource is her website, malala.org. And she created this for her organization, the Malala Fund. And so it says, I tell my story not because it is unique, but because it is the story of many girls. So lots of people across the world are experiencing the things that she experienced. And so at the bottom down here is a really neat timeline that shows pictures and dates of her life that were important to her. Born, there's pictures of her with her family. how she was born in Pakistan. And then this is a picture of her with her dad and all of her classmates when she did get to go to school in her village. And at 11 is when they had to stop going to school, and she didn't get to see her friends at school anymore. And so then in 2012 is when she started speaking out publicly on the behalf of girls and their right to learn. That made her a target. And so then she was attacked, but she recovered. And in 2014 is when she received the Nobel Peace Prize and started publicly speaking around the world. And so 2018, she went to the University of Oxford for college, and she studied philosophy, politics, economics, and she travels doing speaking engagements and trying to help build schools. And so on her website is all different links and things about the schools that she has built. So I hope that you have enjoyed our lesson today. I have loved getting to spend this last day with you. And I really encourage you to think of ways to spread kindness and make the world a better place, as if you had a magic pencil at your disposal. What would you do? I would love to hear about what you decide to do with your family to make that happen. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in August when we get to come back to school.
that where you can hold it? A little bit of a problem with our microphone this morning, so I get to use one like I'm on American Idol. That's awesome. That's anyway. I won't be singing for you today, though, unless it's Green and Speckled Frogs. That might be kind of exciting. I want to welcome all my 5th grade students here from Sequoyah Elementary, Mrs. Eaton's class especially, Mr. Trujillo, Miss Cox, Miss Morgan's class. They're all pretty excited to see me this morning. I guess I didn't realize we had that many fans. I got a lot of wonderful feedback last week from our frog unit. I know some of you made the life cycle of the frog, which was on a paper plate. Some of you did that. And my friend Jace from my class also sent me some amazing pictures, put them on Storytime with Mrs. Duff on Facebook, of a frog habitat that he had last year, where he watched them grow from tadpoles all the way up to adult frogs. So that is really cool. If you haven't been on there this week, you really need to go check out some cool things. Something else that happened. When I got home last week, guess what was out? One of our baby chicks. And then a lot more came out of their shells, and they all hatched. We had 8 total hatch. 1 went to chickie heaven because that happened. But there are 7 remaining chicks. So they're living at my house right now, but I brought 2 to show you. And I love that Mr. Trujillo can just move our camera. Here's under their light. They have a light right here. If you notice, and they have still some down, but if you look at the now, they have to side where they're going to be one of my nets. They've been in my living room while they were hatching. Now this morning, let's start out with our calendar. We've been talking about our calendar for the last few weeks. We've been doing it together. This will be our last day to do it because it is our last day for RSU TV teaching. So I'm just so excited that so many of you have been tuning in and watching our chicks grow and learning wonderful new things this spring about life cycles. Today is Thursday. Can you say Thursday? Well, Thursday is not the beginning of the week and not at the end of the week. It's kind of just in the middle. Let's say our days of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Good job, boys and girls. Now, it is still the month of May, and May is always our last month of school here at Sequoyah. And it probably is your last month of school no matter where you're at in Oklahoma. So that's pretty exciting that we all get out the same month. Well, hatching day got moved here to the last Thursday because that's when they hatched. And then we start right here. And let's count all the way up till today. And I'll stop and tell you when we get to today's date. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Today is May the 7th, 2020. Now, a lot of the times we don't finish school till about the 4th, or maybe even down there on the 21st. But this year we get to finish just a little bit early, and that's okay. It's all right. You guys are still going to do lots of things at your homes. You're still going to get to do lots of fun things that are educational with your parents. I have a few things that I'm going to show you after our story today. So I want to talk to you about our story today. It's going to be about butterflies. Can you guys say butterfly? Let's clap that. Butterfly. How many syllables is that? Butterfly. That's right, 3. We've done butterflies several weeks in a row. How about earthworm? Earthworm. Good job. I have some more written down over here. Let me come over here where I can read them and just sit down and kind of get comfortable. I think that might be easier for Mr. Trujillo. He won't have to chase me. Now, we've got bumblebee. Let's say that. Bumblebee. Good job. How many syllables? 3. Good. Stink bug. Stink bug. 2. Eggshell. Eggshell. Good job. Bluebell. Bluebell. That's also 2. Buttercup. Buttercup. Good job. We already did butterfly, so dragonfly. Dragonfly. 3 syllables. Good. And rainbow. Rainbow. Good job. That was 2. Now today we're going to talk about another one that's got a lot of syllables. Caterpillar. Let's count how many syllables are in that. Caterpillar. 4 syllables. Wow. Now some of those were also compound words. Actually, most of those were compound words. Like butterfly. Put it together. It's butterfly. Good. Earthworm. Earthworm. Bumblebee. Bumblebee. Good job on those. You guys are doing a good job. Those were all springtime words. They're things that we might see in the springtime, find in the springtime. You might find lots of doves outside, maybe butterflies, birds, things like that. Now, some of you may not live where you can go outside whenever you want. You might live in an apartment or maybe a house where you don't have a backyard. So that's when our imagination comes into play. We have to think about how many things that we aren't able to do right now that we can recreate in our mind and do inside. So if you like to go to the gathering place and pretend like you are a prince or a princess living in that giant castle that's at the gathering place, well, guess what? You could pretend like you were in a giant castle in your house. If you like to go to the park at the lake and swing, maybe you could pretend like you were swinging just by swinging back and forth on something. At home, if your parents have something, you can do that. Or maybe sitting in a rocking chair and pretending like you're swinging. So there are all kinds of things you can do inside or at your home. Maybe your parents might take you for a walk, or you might get to pretend like you are a celebrity chef. You could get something and pretend like you have a microphone, just like Mrs. Duff, and be doing your school for maybe your brothers or sisters or mom and dad or maybe some neighbors that you're allowed to be with. Now, we're going to, and I want to talk to you about using your imagination, because that's what I was just telling you. You could use your imagination to do things at home. Well, our imagination can take us anywhere, no matter where we're at. There was a famous author named J.K. Rowling, and one of my students, Jackson, just finished one of J.K. Rowling's first books, Harry Potter. And in Harry Potter, she takes you to Hogwarts Academy, and they are wizards and wizards. She wrote books, and there are thousands and millions in patients, and there were several in the series, and a lot of people are about the books that she wrote. So today I'm going to make up a story, because that's what Storytime with Mrs. Duff is. I have lots of books. I could read this Winnie the Pooh book. It's about a honey, funny, sunny day. This is a caterpillar book. And it's The Very Hungry Caterpillar. It's got a sticker on it. I really don't know why. That's written by Eric Carle. And then there's a bumblebee book in here. That's about an insect. And then I've got The Grouchy Ladybug. And it's about an insect. I've also got a book that is The Legend of the Giant Turtle. And it is actually a legend. It is Native American land. And they actually did this maybe when I was at a Cherokee conference. So it's a pretty informative book. You tell with it. But legends are stories that are passed down. Well, we have a Cherokee storyteller that comes to our school every year, and they tell stories. There's no picture books. There's no nothing. And our story today is going to be about a butterfly. And this butterfly doesn't live out on a farm. He does that has like just a huge amount of space. This caterpillar started out as a little bitty egg on a little bitty twig on a little bitty leaf in a pretty small tree in a parking lot in front of a bakery. Lots of cars drove by every day, but for some reason the butterfly that was this caterpillar's mom landed on some leaves and a twig, and it laid 4 eggs. Those 4 eggs hatched one day. And the caterpillars were named Chad, Mark, John, and Joel. So one day, they were all crawling up and down, and the first day they were born, they all ate that same leaf, and they got kind of hungry. So Chad and Mark went off on their own, and John and Joel stayed together. Well, sadly, when one of the nurses that worked at the nearby hospital walked by to go to her shift one morning, Chad got really excited to see a person, and a big gust of wind came and it blew him out of the tree, and guess what? Squish! He got stepped on. But then Mr. McGillicuddy, who came every day to watch the tree and sit under the tree to have his morning coffee, was sitting one day, and he decided that it was his job, after he saw what happened to Chad, it was his job to make sure that Mark, John, and Joel made it to be butterflies. So he came every day, and as rush hour went by and lots of people walked by and they came in the bakery and got their coffee and their donuts, and then they came out, he watched every day. Well, he left every day about noon when it wasn't busy anymore, and the caterpillars continued to eat their leaves. But the thing is Joel didn't really like the leaves. Now Mark and John, they were happy to go all over that tree and just eat those leaves. Yum, 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 yum. But Joel could smell all the wonderful stuff that was coming from the bakery. He could smell the kolaches that had sausages in them, and he could smell the cakes they were baking for people to pick up for birthday parties. He could smell the maple donuts and the apple fritters. He could smell that warm, yummy caramel coffee that they served. That was their specialty. And so he decided one night after it got dark and the bakery was closed, he was going to go investigate. He crawled down the trunk of the tree, and he was teeny tiny, so you couldn't hardly see him. And he crawled across the parking lot over to where the dumpster was, where they put all the food that they were done with for the day. And he went inside and he ate. He ate through a big sausage, and he ate through a piece of birthday cake, and he ate through a donut. And he even slurped up some of that yummy caramel coffee. Well, that coffee had a lot of caffeine. It kept him awake all night long. I mean, he just went all over that parking lot. But then when the sun started to rise, and it was just about time for that nurse to walk by, and he didn't want to get squished again on her way to her morning shift, he went back over really, really fast because he'd had all that caffeine. And he went back up the tree, and he looked for Mark and John. Well, Joel looked on the first twig where they were all born. Mark and John were not there. Joel looked up high in the tree where Mark and John liked to eat their favorite big leaves. They weren't there. And then all of a sudden, he saw something. He saw these little brown squiggly things hanging from the bottom of one of the twigs, 2 together. Mark and John had made their chrysalis. They were finished eating because they ate the right things. They had grown big and they were ready to make their chrysalis. Well, Joel was kind of lonely. He didn't know why he hadn't grown like they had. He didn't know why it wasn't his turn to make a chrysalis yet, but he wasn't ready to. He knew that. So all day he crawled all over the tree, all over it, and he just ate little bits of leaves. He really didn't like. They did not taste nearly as good as that caramel coffee. He knew he had to eat the right things so he would grow big and strong. So he went all over the tree, And eventually, he ate so much that he was so full he could not eat anything else. And that night, he went to sleep. And the next morning when he woke up, guess what? He felt like he probably should just go hang from a branch and start making his chrysalis. So that's what he did. He hung from a branch and he made his chrysalis. So he had to weave some silk and some things around him, and then he hung just like a J, just like the letter J, from the branch. Well, now, some caterpillars hang there for a long time. Their chrysalises take forever. These caterpillars had kind of fast chrysalises. So they went about 10 days, and then guess what happened? Mark and John came out of their chrysalis. But guess who was still hanging there? Yep, you guessed it. Joel was still hanging there because he hadn't eaten the right things to begin with. So he was kind of a little bit behind. That was okay. So Mark and John came out and they spread out their wings and they had beautiful, what color do you guys want them to be? Purple. Ooh, I love purple. Beautiful purple butterfly wings. And they waited till their wings dried. They had to stay on that branch for probably about an hour, maybe a little longer, to let the wind blow their wings dry. And then they flew down and they perched right on the bakery window. They watched all the customers all day. And there were some flowers planted outside, so they'd go down to the flowers and they would eat some nectar and get a little bit to eat. They would go back up and they would hang out there on the window and they had a discussion. So where do you think Joel is? I don't know. I don't know where Joel's at. Joel didn't come out of his chrysalis yet. I don't know. Maybe he got smashed by the nurse like Chad did. They had this conversation all day long. And that night they went down and they slept in the flower pot. They hung out on the flower and that's where they slept all night. And then the next morning, guess what happened? Just about the time Mr. McGillicuddy came and sat on the bench with his coffee, Joel started to emerge from his chrysalis. First, his head came out. Then his legs kind of emerged, and he unwrapped his beautiful purple wings. And he had to sit there for a little while. He wasn't a very patient butterfly. He wanted to take off flying right away. He had to wait. And while he waited there, he could see his friends on the window. Mark and John were hanging out on the window. And just about the time his wings were dry enough for him to take off flying, guess what happened? That's right. They flew over and they landed right next to him and they said, Joel, we've been waiting for you to come out of your chrysalis. And so out of the chrysalis he came. Off the branch he flew. And they flew down to the bakery window. And they watched all the customers. And they landed in the flower pot. And Mr. McGillicuddy got to see the beautiful butterflies they had become. He even took pictures with them and posted them on Facebook and said, see, these are the wonderful caterpillars I watched that started from an egg, and then they were little caterpillars, and they made their chrysalis, and now they're full-grown caterpillars ready to fly off and see the world. And everybody was so excited. He got thousands of likes. And at the end of that day, those 3 beautiful purple butterflies flew off to live in another part of the world. And that's the end. And Mr. McGillicuddy didn't see them again. That's kind of how you guys are. We as teachers, we watch you just like Mr. McGillicuddy did. And we watched you all year long until you learned so many things that now it's the end of school and you are ready to fly off and see the world, just like those butterflies are. Those butterflies are just like you. Sometimes butterflies come out of their chrysalis early, and sometimes they come out of their chrysalis late, just like you do, boys and girls. But guess what? You all get there together, don't you? Now, that's the end of my story, and today I have a couple of crafts that go with my story. Now, you are going to have several of these things at your house, and if you don't, it's okay. But I have first a butterfly craft to show you. It's going to be kind of hard because I'm hanging on to this. And Mother's Day is coming up, so I have a few Mother's Day options. You could make a Mother's Day card by tracing your hand and maybe writing Happy Mother's Day on the inside. And I posted these on Storytime with Mrs. Duff. There's another handprint. You could just make a handprint, don't have to make a card. But then I made a butterfly. Do you want to know how to make a butterfly? I thought you would. So I took a coffee filter and I colored it with markers. And because I'm having a hole, this is going to be kind of hard. So I just took markers. Now, parents, you need washable markers because Expos don't work. I tried it. Expos don't work. So you'll scribble around on there until it looks kind of like this. Oh, if I can get it off of there. All the way around, maybe blue, green, whatever. If you do blue and yellow and then you spray it with water, brought my water. You spray it with water, guess what happens? Going to run together. I'm trying not to spray all our equipment here. It's going to kind of, see how it runs together? It starts to look tie-dye. If you have two different colors on there, it'll look tie-dye. I think there was some yellow underneath on this, so it's kind of peeping through. And after it dries, it's going to all run together. So if you put like blue and red, what color are you going to end up with? That's right, you're going to get purple. If you put blue and yellow, you're going to get a little bit of green. That's right, you could do red and yellow, whatever. Now, if you don't have a coffee filter, you can use a paper towel. It works just fine. But you need to put a paper plate under it because see how much seeps through or some kind of something under it. Now, if you don't have markers, that's okay because a lot of us don't have everything at home that the teachers have at school. This is water that's been colored with food coloring. Yellow, red, and blue. What two colors do you think I should mix today? Oh, red and yellow. That makes orange. So you'll take your coffee filter or a paper towel and you'll fold it up. Pretty small, or it will just kind of fit in there so you can dip it in the food coloring. So we're going to do yellow at the bottom. There we go. I drifted on me. Yellow at the bottom. And then we're going to do a little bit of red at the top. And when it mixes all together, and then I'll unfold that, you can put it in the microwave to make it dry a little faster. I did that yesterday. I cheated. 2 minutes. So when it all goes together, you're going to end up with a fabulous tie-dye piece. And you can squish it together in the middle, and you have several options. You can clip it with a clothespin. And you have a butterfly made it with a clothespin. I straighten it out a little bit. You get the idea. You can use maybe a rubber band or a hair tie. You can also use a pipe cleaner. I bought these at the dollar store for $1. And you could also make bugs out of a little egg carton too. So any kind of things. And my final one is this. So that was kind of cool, wasn't it? You could make that for your mom for Mother's Day. It's also Teacher Appreciation Week, and we want to thank you all for watching us on RSU TV, and be sure to try to thank your teacher if there's any way that you can thank your teacher. We thank you, and this is our last day, so I want to make sure that you know how much we love you. So everybody point to your head and say, I'm brilliant. I am strong. Are you saying them with me? Good job. I am caring. I am determined. I'm a hard worker. And I am helpful. And the last but not least, I want you to reach wide out and hug yourself and say, I am loved. And remember, all summer long, I want you to keep that love with you. And remember, your teachers are thinking of you and all the school personnel, your principals, your custodians, your lunch ladies, your bus drivers, they're all thinking about you. You guys have a wonderful summer. And I want you just to remember that we love you. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Barbara Smith. Welcome back to RSU Learn TV, and today we're going to be talking about figurative language and what it all means. I know you've been asking yourself that exact question. That's why we're doing this, because I knew you wanted to know. So here we go. Can you guys see the screen okay? All right, so we're going to talk about figurative language. But before we do that, I want to show you a quick little trifold thing that you can keep up with these terms. Now, I pre-made mine, but I'm going to show you how to make this. So you're just going to take a single piece of paper, and you're going to fold it in threes. So any way you want to do that. I can't ever seem to get mine lined up, but so like make it look like a brochure or something. Yeah, that's good enough for government work. All right, so it looks like a brochure, and then since we're only doing 9 words today, you can fold it again in threes. Fold it again in threes. Make sure you make those lines. This is what I'm trying to make the lines visible, the folds visible. So after you get done, so you can write your words on it. So you could do a front cover, and you could design this cover any way you want, and when you open it up, you'll see the fold, and then that's how you can section off your words. I'll show you what I did for mine. So as we go through, you can write these terms down. I'm not sure if you'll have enough time to take definitions, but you can try that, or just write the terms down and then go back and get the definitions later, because this will be on YouTube, so you can always go back and pause. So this is my little trifold I made. I put my artwork. Oh yeah, there. It's not upside down. So this is my artwork, and then I open it up, and I've designed it in here. So I have simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, understatement, and then you flip it over to the back. I have artwork, and then on the inside, there's 7, 8, 9. And you can draw your literal interpretation of an idiom and some more artwork. So you can design this however you want to do it. It doesn't actually have to be a trifold. Maybe you just want a regular sheet of paper. Well, who'd want a regular sheet of paper? That's boring. Okay, so moving on. Let's get the show started, right? I know you guys are all interested in knowing like what the terms are and how to figure this stuff out. So, figurative and literal language. The definition of figurative and literal language. So, as kids, I know when you get to about 6th grade, you have issues with the figurative language because you're used to thinking literally, and that's okay. But as you get older, you realize that we use these terms all the time. You just don't say, "Why, golly George, I just used an idiom." "Why, Becky, you're right. That was a perfect metaphor." I don't know those people. I'm just, improvising? Okay, so figurative and literal language. Literally, words function exactly as they are defined. The car is blue. What can you say about that? The car is blue. There's no hidden code in that whatsoever. You're literally saying the car is blue. He caught the football. That definitely is not encoded. He either caught the football or he did not catch the football. That's literal language. Figurative language. So you have to figure it out what it means. And we do these by identifying whether it's metaphor, hyperbole, simile. Usually we know deep down in us what it means, because we've been doing this since we were born. Actually, your first introduction probably to figurative language was through fairy tales and stories that your parents read to you, like Red Riding Hood or the 3 Little Pigs. I think it's 3 Little Pigs. 3 Little Pigs. So you guys have been introduced to this way early. So that's why you don't actually think about what this stuff means. You kind of just know what it means. So you got to trust that when you're doing this in the English class. You got to trust your gut, because you already know what it means. So figurative language, I've got your back. So you literally cannot have someone's back, like in this picture right here. this stick figure, he has his back. So if you had someone's back like that, you were removing their spleen, and that would kill them. You're a doll. That is also another figure of speech. That's another idiom, or it could be a metaphor, but doesn't literally mean that you're a doll, unless they mean that you are quiet and still and you don't eat much. Or maybe you're one of those creepy dolls, like this guy. Yeah, he's creepy, right? So if you had a bigger version of this dude, I wouldn't want him in my room. So those are all figures of speech. So simile. All right. So when we talk about similes and metaphors, there's a difference here. So simile is a comparison of two things using, and here's the key word, guys, using like or as. And we're not writing on the board for some reason. Just pretend I wrote on the board. All right, so a simile is a comparison using like or as. So you have to compare two things. Example, the metal twisted like a ribbon. So what do you think that means? The metal twisted like a ribbon. So the metal was soft and it twisted easily and it looked like a ribbon. She is as sweet as candy. What do you think that means? But you have your, let's see if this works. We're going to try it one more time. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so here's your as. She is as sweet as candy. As. So maybe you mean she's nice, like super nice. Like maybe she actually really does go and give candy to people. That would just be ironic. Okay. So I want to drive this point home, though. Just because it has the word like or as in it does not make it a simile. You have to compare two things. A comparison must be made between this thing and that thing. Like she is a doll. You're comparing she to a doll. So this is not a simile. I like pizza. That's a literal statement. Because I guess you could turn it into a figurative language or a simile. You could say, okay, yeah, here we go. Simile, the moon is like a pizza. The moon is like a pizza. You're not saying I like pizza in that statement. You're just looking at the moon and the way that the moon looks with the holes on it, the dark spots. Maybe that looks like a pizza. But remember, a comparison must be made. Metaphor. If I need to slow down, y'all stop me, okay? So we have simile and metaphor, so hopefully you're writing these down. So metaphor are two things are being compared without using like or as. So you're saying something is something else. So I'm going to come over here, I don't know if you can follow me, but we want to use our, and there's no markers. So we want to use our to be verbs like is, am, was, were, are. If I missed anything, someone text me, message me, email me, tell me I missed something. But is, am, was, are, were are your to be verbs. So you're saying all the world is a stage. What two things are you comparing here? You're comparing world to a stage, and you're saying it is. Men are dogs. You're comparing men to dogs. Now, I didn't make this up. I got this off of Teachers Pay Teachers, but so I would never say that about my dog because I love my dog. Her heart is stone. You're comparing her heart to stone, or maybe something hard. That, maybe she has no feelings. You're saying that the person who you're saying a heart is stone, they have no feelings. Personification, giving human traits to objects or ideas. Now in this case, that man is a dog. He literally is a dog. The sunlight dance. So you're giving the human traits to the sunlight. The sunlight is dancing. Well, what does that mean? Well, maybe the way the sunlight is moving moving across the field or in your room. It looks like it's dancing, but it literally cannot dance. It's just a figure of speech. Water on the lake shivers. Water cannot shiver because it's human, but maybe when you look out across the lake or the pool, and I know you guys are thinking like swimming season already, aren't we all? Just can't wait, right? So when you look out across that lake and the water is moving, maybe that looks like shivers. The streets are calling me. Now, I don't know about you, but if I literally heard the streets calling me, I think I would call my primary care physician and say, like, yes, the streets are calling me. Do you realize that's a problem? I'll come and see you right away. So streets literally cannot call you. So maybe it means that you're being called to go out and travel. You want to go explore. That's not a very good-looking dog, is it? We're going forward. Hyperbole. Oh, I love hyperbole. It's exaggeration to show a strong feeling or effect. So, I will love you forever. Now, forever is a very long time, and none of us will see forever because, humans have, like, an end to their life. So forever, this is why this is a hyperbole. That's an exaggeration. My house is 1,000,000 miles away. Unless your house is on a different planet, it cannot be 1,000,000 miles away. She'd kill me. Now, if someone's literally going to kill you, you probably need to call 911. Just saying. But examples, these are examples of hyperbole and exaggeration to strong effect. Well, what does it mean if someone's going to kill you? Probably means you're in big trouble for something. Understatement. So you might have not heard this particular term before, but it's the opposite of hyperbole, and it has less strength than expected. So it's the I just said that this is the opposite of hyperbole. Example: I'll be there in 1 second. You literally cannot be anywhere in 1 second. Maybe you mean you'll be there in 5 minutes, or you mean you'll be there quicker, but you can't be there in 1 second, so that's an understatement. Or, this won't hurt a bit. So, our example here is Sheldon. He's saying, I will now inject you with this blue venom. It won't hurt a bit. That's a lie, especially if you are afraid of needles. Onomatopoeia. So, I hope you guys are caught up. So onomatopoeia is where we're at, and it's a word that makes a sound. So bam, splat, pow, bang. A lot of old Batman movies, if you've ever watched any old Batman movies with Adam West, they actually would put the effects in there. When you read your comic books, the old comic books had these onomatopoeias in them. So it's a word that sounds like its meaning. And if you are like me, I have to look this word up every single time to spell it. Onomatopoeia. Such a long word for such a short meaning, right? I feel like that should be a joke. Onomatopoeia. There's a joke there. Maybe in 10 years I'll figure it out. Okay, idiom. These are my favorite because we use idioms all the time in our everyday world, especially if you are from Oklahoma. We have a lot of sayings. So it's a saying that's not meant to be taken literally. It doesn't mean what it says. So don't be a stick in the mud. Well, you can't be a stick in the mud, literally. The stick can be a stick in the mud. So what does a stick in the mud mean? Maybe it means that you're boring. Maybe it means you don't like to have fun. Or you're not flexible. You're too rigid. You're the apple of my eye. Cannot, unless you put an apple on your eye, so don't take that literally. Apple of my eye means that you are very fond of that person. I have an ace up my sleeve. So this might mean that that you know something that other people don't, or you're a little bit skilled in other areas. But back in the old Western days, you definitely don't want to have an ace up your sleeve, because if you did, that'd be cheating, and then they run you out of town like, I believe we got a cheater. I don't know if that's how they actually say that. I didn't live back then, but thanks for thinking I did. Do I point it this way? There we go. Pun. So we're on the word pun, if you guys are keeping track. It's wordplay in which words have a double meaning. So these are also my favorite. They make me laugh every time because they're just hilarious. I wondered why the baseball was getting bigger, and then it hit me. So the baseball is like, okay, let me back up. When you see something far out, it looks small, but when it gets closer to you, then it gets bigger. So that's why it's funny, because she was seeing the baseball come to her face, and then it hit her, and that's not funny. That if you actually got hit with the baseball in the head, then I'm sorry. I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put it down. So we get it, right? Gravity keeps us down. Anti-gravity would be laughing. I was going to look for my missing watch, but I didn't have the time. These are so silly. So let's see what the cartoon says. Why don't you use a vacuum cleaner? Vacuum cleaners suck. Obviously. Well, if they don't suck, then yeah, silly cartoon. Yeah, we get it, right? Do you want me to read this? Huh? Oh, you can't see that? All right, so this cartoon is, I think I need a gallon of cocktail sauce, and she's got this jumbo shrimp in front of her. So jumbo shrimp finally has a real meaning. I've never seen a shrimp that big. And if you call someone a shrimp, that's also an insult. They might have to clock you. All right, so don't follow these directions. We're going to do this together. If we were in class, maybe you could write it on something and we could have fun. So we're going to go through. There's a lot of these, so I've planned this out just in case because I always end short. So you're gonna try to figure out whether it's a simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, pun, idiom, and onomatopoeia, oxymoron, or understatement. So there's proverb is here. We didn't do that one. It wasn't in here this time. So those are your 9 words. So hopefully you got all 9. All right, so number 1. He drew a line as straight as an arrow. You guys got this. What is it? Come on, I know you know. What are we looking for? What are we looking for? Who knows? It is simile. I know, I'm just using it to point. He drew a line as straight as an arrow. So here you have as, and you are comparing the line to an arrow. You're saying it's straight as an arrow. And I do not know what happened to number 2. Just sort of misnumbered these. Can I see you for a second? Can I see you for a second? Has anyone ever said, can I see you for a second? And it actually literally was a second. So what is this? It's an understatement. Right. The sun was beating down on me. So the sun is literally not going to beat down on you. You're giving human characteristics to the sun. And it's what? Personification. It's personification. That's right. A flag wags like a fish hook there in the sky. So the flag wags like a fish hook in the sky. So you're comparing the flag to a fish hook. So here's our comparison. 2 things. And you're using the word like. And it is a simile. Very good. Okay, now this one's long. And I love this picture of the cat. I don't know if they can see that or not, but it's a cat with big shark teeth. So it says, I'd rather take baths with a man-eating shark or wrestle a lion alone in the dark, eat spinach and liver, pet 10 porcupines, than tackle the homework my teacher assigns. So come on, guys. We all know what this is, right? It's exaggeration. We're exaggerating. So an exaggeration would be a hyperbole. Right. Say it with me. Hyperbole. Cannot be in the house unless you're just protesting spaghetti night and you just toss your plate up there. Dinner is on the house. Like, that means what? It's free, guys. So what is this then? This is one of those things that is not literal. So it's a thing that we say all the time. It's an idiom. An idiom. Can I have one of your chips? Now, someone asks you if they can have one of your chips or fries. With me, hyperbole, hyperbole, woohoo. All right, number 15. He drove his expensive car into a tree and found out how the Mercedes Benz. Okay. He drove his car into a tree and found out a Mercedes Benz. So get it? It's the play on words. So that is the word that starts with a P, which is a pun. That is right. That is hilarious. I've got to use that. I gotta post that somewhere. I used to have a fear of hurdles, but I got over it. Again, another pun. So here we have an epic fail. He missed the hurdle. He was probably trying to do the limbo. Can't do limbo anymore. Oh, it kills my back. So this is a pun. I used to have a fear of hurdles. Haha. The heck. Okay. He didn't actually get over it. He got under it. Here. 17. The wheat field was a sea of gold. Okay, we know what this is. So you're comparing what? Wheat field to sea of gold, and you're saying it was. So here's your verb. Your to be verbs is am, was, were. So you're saying it was. So what does that mean? It means literally that the field is gold in color. 18. The street's called Dam. We already did that one before. Pop. You guys know what this one is, right? Pop. Onomatopoeia. She was dressed to the nines. Now, usually this is one of those idioms that kids are like, I don't know what that means. So, dressed to the nines means not like a perfect 10. I guess that would mean that, but perfect 10 would be like all decked out, but dressed up to the nines meaning you looked really good. So old news is another idiom. And this picture could be a pun for that because this child is definitely not old. So old news, but the term or the statement here, old news, is an idiom. Literally, Justin Bieber, your face is killing me. I know you guys everyone out there loves Justin Bieber, right? So you don't understand why I put that. He's a cute kid. Don't give him too much heck, guys. All right, your face is killing me means I hate looking at you. Oh, we're coming to the end of the show. She was as white as a ghost. She definitely is as white as a ghost. So because she's got a sheet on her, so you cannot be literally as white as a ghost. What would that mean? That you're scared. So what is it? Is it you're comparing the girl? As she, I'm guessing, she is a pronoun for a girl, is white as a ghost. You're comparing her to a ghost, meaning that she looks like pale. Maybe she's sick. Maybe she got food poisoning and she was up all night throwing up. She has a skeleton in her closet. Why are we picking on the women today? She has a skeleton in her closet. She has a heart of stone. Man. So what does that mean? Like, if she literally has a skeleton in her closet, again, call 911 unless it's one of those Halloween props. Yeah, you might want to call 911 if you find a skeleton in someone's closet. So what does it mean? Well, that is an idiom, and it means that she has stuff that she's hiding. And yes, I guess that if this was not a Halloween prop and you wanted to hide it, someone found it, you'd be in big trouble. So I think that is the end of my show. How much time do I have left? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so guys, I hope you kept up with me today. So if you didn't get all of those terms down, go to the YouTube, and you can pause it and you can watch it from there and you can copy that stuff down. And like I said, it's an interesting template to have. And you can carry this with you throughout your high school career, unless you are a typical 6th grader and lose it in 30 seconds. So it was nice seeing you guys again today. I'm sad that this is our last show with you all, and I miss everyone out there. And let me just say that I hope to see you all next year, starting in August. Miss Dorsey is up next, and she's going to be math history this time. Not my favorite subject, but Miss Dorsey makes it fun because she's so spunky. So I guess I will see you guys later.
Hey guys, if you can't tell by the giant smile on my face, I am so excited about today's lesson. So a little backstory about why I'm so excited about today's lesson. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with miniseries and docudramas. I remember watching a movie called Glory, and it was about the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, and I became obsessed with that. So I did all the research I could on that movie. It's a great movie, so watch it. And then there was a mini-series on Napoleon and Josephine Bonaparte. That was fascinating. So I became obsessed with that, and I researched everything I could. Of course, back then, we didn't have the internet. I am that old. So I would read, like, encyclopedias and books. And so anyway, I became obsessed with certain parts of history. Then when I started working at Sequoyah, I didn't start out as a teacher. I was a paraprofessional, which is kind of like a teacher's assistant. And the teacher, Mrs. McAwee, hey, Mrs. McAwee, she taught math. And that's what really sparked my love and interest in math and why I later became a teacher. Fast forward to me going to college in my 30s. Don't try that at home because it's not easy. I mean, do try it if you really want to. But anyway, I took one class on the history of mathematics. Aren't you excited just by that word or phrase? Woohoo! And it changed my world, literally. I didn't see daily life the same because it made me realize that we are literally standing on the shoulders of giants. Everything that we have at our disposal that we take for granted was all due to these pioneers. And there are hundreds of mathematicians that changed the world. And I literally could go all day about these mathematicians. But I've chosen about 5 or 6 of my favorite mathematicians, and I hope at the end of this lesson that you are fired up about math history. So here we go. Mathematicians who changed history. Okay, the first thing I have for you is I want you to think about this. Was math invented or discovered? And this is actually a big debate among mathematicians and scientists. You have one group that believe it was actually discovered. And what does that mean, discovered? It means that these group of mathematicians believe in a higher power, and that math is already there or was already there, and that they just discovered it. Invented would mean that the math wasn't already there waiting to be discovered, that it was actually created out of quote-unquote thin air. And I'm sure if Miss, our teacher before, because I'm having a blank, Miss Smith, thank you. Didn't have breakfast this morning. Eat breakfast, guys. She would probably tell me that was a pun or not an onomatopoeia, but clearly I need to go back to 6th grade language arts. Anyway, so think about that as we go through these different mathematicians, and then ask yourself at the end of this lesson, which side are you on? Okay, so Ramanujan is like in my top 3 favorite mathematicians of all time. He is a Hindi mathematician, and for those of you that don't know what Hindi is, Hindi or Hindu is a religion, but he is from the country of India. So when someone says that they're Indian, they're not talking about Native American, because there is a difference. So he started out as really a child prodigy. He was too smart for his own britches. Another Mrs. Smith thing that we just went over. It says he wrote most of his formulas on the temple floors. So he was very, very poor and didn't have paper. And so what he would do is he would go to his temple where he would worship his God. And these formulas would just come to him. He didn't have any formal training. He didn't go to a university. He didn't have some big degree. they literally, as he would describe it, they just come to him on his tongue. And I'll explain later where he then tells us in a movie, but really he did tell us where he does get these formulas from. So he would write the formulas on the floor, and he would write it in like a chalk dust. So he spent 5 years at Trinity College and became the first person of color to become a fellow. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, he eventually got a job as a clerk for a British company, because at the time of Ramanujan's life, Britain pretty much had rule over India. And one of his mentors at this paper packing plant that he worked at, so to speak, was really impressed with Ramanujan's math. He could do these crazy complex formulas calculating money all in his head and within seconds. And so this mentor of his helped him write letters to different universities over in Europe. And he got a response from G.H. Hardy, who was a fellow. Fellow is a fancy word for a professor at Trinity College. And fun fact, Trinity College is actually where Isaac Newton went to college. So he spent 5 years there, and really why he went there wasn't necessarily to receive a degree. He went there to get formal training on how to prove his formulas. In other words, he would have these complex formulas that nobody could understand. And they wanted to know, well, how did you get to this point? How do you know that this formula is actually going to work? And so what the professors there helped him do was prove his formulas. So when your teacher says, show your work, that's what Ramanujan had to do. He had to prove that these calculations would be successful. When he passed away at the age of 32. He caught tuberculosis while he was in England, almost died, recovered from it. And then on the journey back to India, he caught it again and was there a year with his family, his wife and his mom, and then eventually passed away from tuberculosis. So he was alive during the First World War, so the early 1900s. In 1976, a group of historians, scientists, I'm not really sure which one it was, but they found what are called his lost notebooks, meaning nobody had ever seen this work before. And it was the formulas in that lost notebook that helped scientists today understand black holes. So here we have a young man who was obsessed with mathematics, didn't even, imagine probably that his work would be used one day to help us understand the universe and outer space. And so that's one example of how math relates to another field of science, astronomy. Okay, so one of Ramanujan's big accomplishments while he was at Trinity College, and this is really the formula that gave him the notoriety he was looking for and the validation that he really, his math had a purpose. And it's Ramanujan's partition formula. And partitions are really easy to understand. So basically, it says, how many different ways can you add to get the number 4? And there's 5 different ways. So something like that simple. Well, how many different ways can you add to get to the number 100? Well, before Ramanujan's formula, there would be mathematicians that would painstakingly by hand count the different ways they can add up to get the number 100. Well, Ramanujan, one evening at Trinity College, he was praying to his Namagi which in the Hindu religion, that is each family kind of has their own idol that they worship, their own god. And he later told J.H. Hardy that that is how these formulas came to him, that God was putting them on his tongue. And so Ramanujan, mathematics and religion for him were one and the same, because he said, unless math expresses a thought of God, it means nothing to me. So I thought that was interesting. So basically, Ramanujan came up with this formula and said, you give me any number, and I can plug this number into the formula and quickly calculate how many different ways it can be added up. And he did. Okay, so this is, I don't know anything about black holes, except it pulls like gravity and stuff inward. But this is the first ever image caught of a black hole. And I bet if Ramanujan were alive today, he'd be pretty stoked at that picture. Okay, Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace is a British mathematician. When I was making the slideshow, first I put English mathematician, then I thought, no, there's going to be too many kids out there that think English and American. But so anyway, British. She lived during the 1800s, and her work is considered to be the first written computer algorithm. Algorithm is a fancy word for really long formula, in that it contains written instructions for a machine to follow. So she wrote an algorithm that basically you could apply to, in her mind, some kind of machine that you could give it directions and have it do something. So some mathematicians might say she wasn't the first computer programmer. I would disagree with them. She worked under another computer programmer who's really considered to be the father of computer programming, and his name was Charles Babbage. You are not going to find a whole lot of famous female mathematicians compared to the number of men, and here's why. In the time of Ada Lovelace, being smart, having your own opinion, really being able to express yourself was not something that was looked highly upon. She came from a family where she was actually what you would call like a love child, in that her father was Lord Byron, and he was a famous poet. And so she probably had a little bit of an easier time getting her foot into that world because her father was famous and revered at the time. But a lot of the female mathematicians that you'll find come from very poor upbringings. And so they really had to struggle to get their foot in the door. Another female mathematician that I think is amazing that I didn't include in the slideshow is Marie Curie. And she basically discovered radium, which is radiation, and that's why we can do like x-rays and MRIs, you know, because like I say to my kids in class, math builds upon itself. So when I say that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, I'm meaning that there's someone else that came before us who really did all the hard work and knew that what they were doing was important and was hoping someday someone would take their work that they did and build upon it and build upon it. And we have. Okay, Gottfried Leibniz. He is a contemporary, meaning a counterpart of Isaac Newton. You hear a lot about Isaac Newton and how he discovered or invented, which one is it? Gravity, laws of motion, calculus during the Great Plague back in like the 1700s. Isaac Newton was pretty much quarantined, like we are right now. And so it was during this quarantine of like 18 months that he discovered, invented, what have you, calculus. So that's in England. Well, around the same time, Gottfried Leibniz also discovered calculus, but you won't hear about him. And his life was actually pretty sad. There was a big dispute among the fellow mathematicians with Isaac Newton and Gottfried Leibniz, and pretty much Isaac Newton accused this man of stealing his work. So because Isaac Newton was so revered, he pretty much ruined Gottfried Leibniz's life. He lived a very lonely life, and when he finally did pass away, historians tell us that nobody went to his funeral. That's pretty sad. He went on to become one of the most productive inventors of mechanical calculators. So when you're able to use a calculator in class, you need to thank this guy right here. Inventing both the pinwheel calculator and the Leibniz wheel. The Leibniz wheel was used in the arithmometer, which was the first real mass-produced mechanical calculator. Now, something that I don't have on the slideshow that I want to talk about is binary numbers. And for those computer geeks out there, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Binary numbers are 0 and 1. And he created the binary number system because he wanted to simplify human error or completely get rid of it. And so he believed he could do that by just using 0 and 1, which is how these calculators worked, using zeros and ones. Well, what does that mean for us today? Well, when computers speak to each other, they use zeros and ones. They use the binary number system. So because of this dude, I love the word dude. I do say that a lot. Because of this dude, we are able to use computers and email and FaceTime our loved ones, using your cell phones, your smartphones. So thank Mr. Gottfried for that one. Okay, Archimedes. Love me some Archimedes. He's my streaker. He is most known for running through the streets naked, shouting Eureka, which translated means I've got it, I've got it. And the story behind that is the king wanted to find out whether his crown was real or not. Was he cheated when he asked the royal jeweler to make him this crown? So supposedly Archimedes was sitting in the bathtub and somehow the crown became involved and it was floating or not floating in the water. And that's when he got freaked out and he ran out of the bathtub, naked through the streets, yelling, Eureka, he'd figured it out. Some historians will say, though, that wasn't the real story because the word crown comes from the Greek word korona, which actually means ship. Now, this part is true. He designed and helped build a massive ship called the Syracusia, which was to be a gift for, I think it was the pharaoh Ptolemy. It made one journey. There's no records in the history books of whatever happened to it, and I'll give you my theory on that here in a little bit. But it made a voyage to the city of Alexandria. So he was obsessed with mathematics, and he wrote in the dirt. When he was murdered, it is said to be that he said, I beg of you, please do not disturb this. And he was actually killed during the Roman invasion. He invented the Archimedes Screw, which is still used today, and he discovered the law of buoyancy. If you've ever been on a cruise ship, you can thank this guy. This is a picture on the left of an ancient Archimedes screw, and this is a picture of an Archimedes screw system actually in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a very low-lying country, and so they flood sometimes, or often, I guess. And the Archimedes screw is when you turn it, it pumps water from the bottom to the top. So this made irrigation farming much easier for farmers in ancient times because they didn't have to plant their crops close to the river. And this way their crops also didn't get flooded. Okay, Pythagoras. Pythagoras is another Greek mathematician. He's considered to be the father of musical spheres. So all you band buffs or musical buffs out there, he discovered that when you had clay pots that were spherical and then they were proportioned to one another, meaning their fractions were not the same, but they were proportioned to one another, we could make them equal. The sound coming off of them was a beautiful harmony. He believed the universe could be explained by using whole numbers. He was obsessed with whole numbers. He formed a school/religion where students couldn't eat beans because he believed that when you farted, part of your soul left your body. So while he was brilliant, he was a little off his rocker. He gave us the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, this is my last mathematician. Hypatia was a Greek/Egyptian mathematician. And I say Greek because that's where her ancestry is from, but she lived in Egypt, in the city of Alexandria. So, quick history about the city of Alexandria. The city of Alexandria was named after Alexander the Great. And so he pretty much established this city, and he wanted Alexandria to be a mecca of knowledge and culture. So in the ancient times, it was a place of knowledge and beauty and art and great knowledge. And the Library of Alexandria housed some of the greatest works known to man. And I believe, let me go back. I believe that some of the lost information from these ancient mathematicians was housed in that library, and that's why we've lost some information today. So she lived during the 4th and 5th centuries in Alexandria, Egypt. She taught philosophy and astronomy, the motion of planets, the number theory and conic sections at the Neoplatonic school in Alexandria. And that's actually a school that her father started. And it wasn't that big of a deal for a woman to become the head of a school because Alexandria was such a progressive city. She was taught by her father and eventually replaced him as the leading mathematician in Alexandria. So Alexandria, in this time of Hypatia's life, were ending the modern era of ancient times. And during this time, there was a group of zealot Christians. And when I say Christians, I'm not talking about like the people you go to church with nowadays that, you know, are loving and kind. These group of people that called themselves Christians hated anything that was different from them. And all of what Hypatia stood for was different from them because she was talking about science and being progressive. And when Alexandria started to be taken over by these Christians, she was murdered. And she died a very grisly death. History will tell us that they took shells and scooped her skin out, and they ripped her body apart. So So that's a pretty horrifying way to die. But math is everywhere. It's in everything that we do. From this building is full of geometry. Without geometry, we can't build stuff. The house that you live in, the car that your parents drive, someday the cars that you'll drive is fueled by, yes, I know, gas or petroleum, but it's fueled by mathematics. And it's an exciting world. So I hope that you found something new that you loved about these mathematicians. The movie, The Man Who Knew Infinity, is about the first mathematician, Ramanujan. And I highly, highly recommend that you watch it. It will change your life. I'm telling you it will. So I will see you guys next school year. Be safe, have fun, and learn something new.
Hey, welcome back. Glad you could join me today. Today I want to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, chemical reactions. Actually, if you think about it, they're near and dear to your heart too, because without chemical reactions, there would be no life. There'd be no phones, there'd be no TVs, cars, anything of that sort. So let's Let's start off with a quick demonstration of a chemical reaction. I'm going to take this. I've got some, I'm going to take this liquid here. I've got some pH indicator. It's going to tell me how strong or how weak the acid is. Just a little bit in there. Now you'll notice it turns green, kind of a greenish color. That's because this is a base. It is the stuff that you use to clean windows. It's the active ingredient in Windex. In here, I have some acid. Watch what happens as I add a little bit of this to it. All right. When all else fails, you drop back 5 yards and punt, right? What's supposed to happen is it was supposed to turn pink. I guess I had a little too much water or too much acid in there, or not enough acid. So having said that, let's try something else. I'll come over here. And for those of you that have been in my class, you know what this is. This is called the Whoosh Bottle. Take some of this. Excuse me. Pour a quantity in there. Set it down here. Now then, I'm going to swirl this around, making a vapor. Might want to add some more. What I'm putting in here is rubbing alcohol, just like you buy at Walmart or whatever. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, don't try this at home. Don't do this at home. I've had a lot of training in how to do this. If you don't do it right, you can cause some bad problems. So I'm going to swirl it around, make sure the sides are coated and it's vaporized. Now then, I'm going to pour out the excess alcohol. Now, please note, I'm pouring it out. Turn it around here like this. Are you ready for this? That is a combustion reaction. I'm taking the hydrocarbons from the alcohol, combining them with oxygen to form two different compounds, forming carbon dioxide and water. Now remember, I poured the excess alcohol out. But watch this. There's the water. Now I know everybody wants me to do it again, do it again, do it again. Well, I can't, not right away. See, that bottle is now full of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is heavier than air. So it has replaced all the air in that bottle. I have to take and tip it up and let it drain out for about 45 minutes before it will work. Another thing that we can do now then, in here I have some metallic sodium. Now, people say, well, where can we get this? Where can we get this? You have to have a reason to get it. And you'll notice that I'm using a pair of tweezers to pull it out. That's because this metallic sodium reacts violently with water. I'm going to run some water in here real quick. Now, I said that this was metallic sodium. Properties of a metal. It's shiny. It conducts electricity and heat. It's malleable, which means we can take and hammer it into a thin sheet. But you're looking at this and say, well, Mr. Harshfield, that doesn't look very shiny. Sodium is a soft metal. I can take the scalpel and cut it, and here you can see how shiny it really is. but you'll notice that it turns that gray color very quickly. It's reacting with the oxygen in the air to form sodium oxide. Now, I said that it reacts violently with water. That's all right. Remember, I poured the alcohol out in the sink from the previous demonstration, and that sodium, when it sparked, ignited that. That's why I say don't do this at home. Don't even try it. Again, you notice I use tweezers for this. That's because that sodium is so reactive that it will react with the moisture in my hands. Now, everybody's heard about elephant's toothpaste, I assume, right? All right, let me get this out of the way. I'm going to take and pour a little dish soap in here. I'm going to take some hydrogen peroxide and pour in here. Now, the peroxide I'm using is about 6%. What you would buy at Walmart is about 3%. Now I have a chemical, this potassium iodide, and this is just a liquid. As you can see here. Now watch what happens when I add this to the flask. We've got a chemical reaction going. It's slow, but it is building. There you can see the reaction. You can see that soap film building. I put that soap in there because that's one indication of a chemical reaction. Yeah, there it comes. It's slow. I know you've seen it on TV where they pump it in and it just goes woof. Probably what they're doing is they're using a stronger hydrogen peroxide. They've got a different catalyst that they use. Oh, catalyst. Definition of a catalyst. It's something that helps the reaction go, but it doesn't take part in the reaction itself. All right. So you've been talking chemical reactions, Mr. Harshfield. What do you mean by chemical reaction? A chemical reaction is where a substance or substances are put together to form something new. There's actually 5 or 6 different types of chemical reactions. The first type is a synthesis reaction. That's where we take 2 substances, put them together to form something new. It could even change the chemical properties. For an example, you saw the reaction of the sodium in water. So, and if we took and combined that with chlorine, now chlorine is a deadly gas. They use it to sanitize water for like swimming pools, and drinking water. We put those 2 together, and it forms a substance that we have to have for life. What do you think NaCl really is? It's sodium chloride It's also known to you as table salt. So next time you put salt on your French fries, remember, you're eating sodium and chlorine. The next type of reaction is a single replacement. That's where one element, and I'm just going to call it A. So element A is going to combine with an element or a compound BC, and it's going to form a new compound AC plus B. The element A is going to replace the element B. How do I know that? These are cations. Cations are the ones that do the replacing. Easy way to remember a cation. Think of a cat. What does a cat have? It has paws. So cats are positive. Cations are positive. And if you stretch a cat out, it's going to look kind of like a plus sign. So that's a nice, easy way to remember that. The next type of reaction is a double replacement. And this is a case where compound AB is going to react with compound CD to produce new substance AD plus CB. My favorite example of this. Sodium hydroxide reacting with hydrochloric acid. Guys, tell you a little secret. Hydrochloric acid you carry with you every second of every day. That's part of your stomach's digestive juices. And it is so strong that it will actually eat metal. And I can tell you why it doesn't in a little bit. But what that's going to do is the sodium and the hydrogen are going to switch places. So now we have sodium chloride plus dihydrogen monoxide, also known as water. We could write that as this. I love that reaction. That reaction is so important to everybody. The next type of reaction we have, combustion. In this case, we're going to take a hydrocarbon, something that has hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, combine it with oxygen, provide some heat. And that little delta, that little triangle there in chemistry means heat or change. And we're going to form this. Again, this is water. This is carbon dioxide. And so that bottle, that Whoosh bottle that I did, is now full of carbon dioxide. Let's see, synthesis, single reaction, double reaction, combustion. Oh, I remember. Decomposition. That's where we're going to take one substance and break it down into two or more new substances. We can take water, apply some energy, and we can break this down into hydrogen plus oxygen. Yeah, I know. Some of you are saying, well, that's not a balanced equation. Remember, a balanced equation means that everything going into the equation has to come out. So to balance it, I'm going to put a 2 here and a 2 here. So now we have 4 hydrogens on this side, 2 oxygens, 4 hydrogens, and 2 oxygens. So now it's a balanced equation. And one of the things I do in my class is I have a device that we can actually do this and determine which is the hydrogen, which is the oxygen. Now, along with this, there are subsets of each of these. One subset is an endothermic. That is a reaction that actually pulls the energy out of the system, out of the environment. And so it's going to feel cold. If you experience an injury, like you sprain your ankle on a football field, and they put that pack on there after they shake it up, that's an endothermic reaction. It's cold. It's going to pull the heat out of your muscles. Another one is an exothermic reaction. That's one that's going to produce heat. It can produce a little heat. It can produce a lot of heat. If I took some sodium hydroxide in solid form, add it to water, mix it up, and let it sit there for a minute, it's going to get extremely hot. The chemical bonds are being broken. The things that hold those atoms together are being broken. And when that happens, it releases energy. I said that chemical reactions are important to life. Think about this. What did you have for breakfast this morning? Well, I see. I had a couple of granola bars. I had a banana. I had an orange. For lunch, I'm probably going to have a salad. For dinner, I don't know what I'm going to have yet, but they all go in. Now, why would I take in food? I take in food for the energy that it produces. These chemical reactions breaks that down, releasing that energy, making that energy available for me to use. Wonderful things. Your car operates on chemical reactions. It reacts in a combustion reaction. Each time that cylinder is pushed down, each time that spark plug sparks, that's an explosion, a controlled explosion, a chemical reaction. Now, please, don't think that carbon dioxide as dry ice, which is carbon dioxide in solid form, is a chemical reaction going to carbon dioxide as a gas. It's not a chemical reaction. It's the same compound, just changing its form. Just like water. When we have ice and we let it melt, it changes into liquid water. That's not a chemical reaction. That is a physical change. It's changing its form. When it goes to steam, that's a physical change. It's changing its form. So, once again, chemical reactions. We have the synthesis reaction, simply means putting things together. We have a single replacement reaction in which things are changed. One item, one compound, or one element is changed for another one in a compound. We have double replacement where two of them are replaced. We have decomposition in which we take and pull those compounds apart. We have combustion in which we combine that compound with oxygen to form something else, breaking it down, recombining it. All these things go into chemical reactions. Let's see, I had one more thing. Oh, before I forget, this right here, this is what's called a pH indicator. It tells me how strong or how weak an acid or a base may be. So remember, in this beaker, we put the sodium in. If I put just a little bit of this pH indicator in, it turns green. This pH indicator will turn green when it's in a base. If we put it in an acid, it turns pink. So we can tell by how much of the acid or base that we have to add to get a color change that we can tell how strong it is. One last thing before I go. The way we can tell a chemical reaction has occurred, first of all, there's going to be a change in color. We saw that here. There's going to be production of heat or light, change of energy in some form. There's going to be production of gases. Think about pouring sodium or some baking soda into vinegar. What happens? It foams up. It foams up because it's producing gas. It's producing carbon dioxide. And then we have, let's say we have change in color. We have a change in the energy of the system. We have production of heat or change in state. For example, it could go from a liquid to a solid. Some of these reactions, when they react, are going to form a solid. Even though we start out with two liquids, we can have a production of sound, production of gas. All these things are going to indicate that we have a chemical reaction. That flame is a chemical reaction. I'm combining the hydrocarbons that are in this with the oxygen. Over here, you can see that we've had a chemical reaction. We've had a production of gas with the sodium. When we put the sodium in water, remember the sparks that flew? A change in the energy of the system. When I had that sodium sitting there on that watch glass, it just sat there. But I put it in water, and it's going to be a reaction. So the next time you look out and you see something, you see a car, you see a car moving, or a car just sitting there, you see animals, even plants, you play with your Xbox or you watch TV, think about all the chemical reactions that went into that particular item. Nothing exists without some sort of chemical reaction occurring. So, once again, I thank you for joining me. I hope that you have a pleasant summer, a safe summer, and I look forward to seeing everybody back in school in the fall. So, thank you once again for allowing me into your home.
everyone. My name is Stephanie Kehler, and I'm a science teacher here at Sequoyah Public Schools. I wanted to take a brief moment to ask you to help to give back to our schools. I don't know if you're familiar with the school blood drives in Rogers County, but OBI is the Oklahoma Blood Institute, and they donate scholarships to our students based upon how many units of blood that we've given throughout the year. With the COVID-19 epidemic, we lost our blood drives at some of the local schools, and so they're going to make those up within the next week. If you have the ability to give to one of these blood drives, that would be amazing because you're providing additional scholarships for our students. There's going to be two. Sequoyah High School is having theirs tomorrow at the Claremore Expo. I believe it's from 9 to 3, and they need about 30 to 35 units of blood in order to get multiple additional scholarships. It's going to be fantastic. Foyle Public Schools is having theirs next Wednesday at Cedar Point Church on the north side of town. Theirs is only from 1 to 5 p.m. and they're asking you to make an appointment ahead of time. And I believe you can do that for Sequoiah's as well. If you go to obi.org, you can schedule an appointment ahead of time. And that will give additional scholarships to both schools, Sequoiah's and Foyle. So if you have the ability to donate blood, you're going to help multiple people as well as provide additional scholarships for our kids here in Rogers County. Thank you guys so much. All right, so today what I thought I would do is spend some time talking about ACT prep for the science portion of the test. There's a lot of state testing that would also relate to this information, and as far as the ACT, that is a state test that we give, but the science portion is separate from there. But anybody who's interested in taking the ACT, all of these general rules hopefully will help you be more successful. So what I thought I would do today is give you 5 different strategies that can help you be more successful. Most of the time, I feel like more successful is just reducing your stress before you get in there. How can I prepare beforehand so that when I get in there, I don't feel as nervous and I can really focus on the test and not have worries that go along with it. So I thought we'd start out talking about what the science portion of the ACT includes, okay? So for the science portion of the ACT, there's 40 questions in 35 minutes. So if you look at those two numbers, you notice that there's more questions than there are minutes to complete them. So anybody who has slight test anxiety, that might get you right away. But hopefully with these 5 strategies, it will help you to move through it more efficiently, and then you're not going to have to worry about how much time you have. There's no calculator portion in here, which may seem scary at first, but it's actually an advantage, I believe. If you're not worried about completing calculations, they're already done for you and given to you in a graph or in a table. That would reduce the whole I'm worried about math section, okay? It's not going to ask you to divide huge numbers and then find the logarithm of them. They're not going to do that, okay? Simple math is in there, but nothing out of the ordinary. The last thing I wanted to point out, so I didn't forget to get to it, is that any unanswered questions you leave on an ACT equal wrong. So it's always important that you answer all of the questions. When they go through and give you that 35-minute time limit, they're going to give you 5-minute warning when it's almost over. And at that point, you can evaluate how many questions do I have to go. It is so important that you answer all the questions, even if you just have to give it your best guess. Don't leave any blank. Always answer all 35 questions. Okay, so strategy number 1. There's going to be different kinds of questions, and the ones with visuals you need to do first, okay? Anything that has a visual you want to do first. So you don't have to know these when you go in there. I'm just trying to give you some background on how the ACT is set up, but there's 3 main types of questions. There's going to be data representation. So when we do labs, like Mr. Harshfield talked about last week with scientific inquiry, we go through those 8 different steps. That data is going to be given to you. You're already at the analysis portion of the scientific method. You don't have to do anything else but be able to read these graphs and charts. Research summaries, they'll have different lab setups, different experiments going on, and they'll summarize that using graphs and charts. And then there's a third type of question called the conflicting viewpoint passages, and those will be strictly reading. Okay, there'll be multiple scientists and what conclusions they've come to, or it might be one scientist who runs 3 different experiments and you have to compare the experiments. What I'm telling you is go to the ones that have graphs and charts first, okay? Seriously, when you're given a visual, don't read the passage first. Read the question and go back and look at the graphs and charts. Typically, the answer is in there already, so you just want to start with your visuals first on the science portion of this test. So what I thought was important, and we're going to look at this graph bigger on the next page, is that you understand how these graphs are set up. When I teach graphs and charts in my classroom, I have them analyze some that they have, but more importantly, I make them create them, okay? I've always been a proponent of, if you can read it, you probably know it, but if you can teach it, you definitely know it. So if my students can read a graph, that's great. If they can make a graph, I know they can read a graph as well. So there's 4 important parts that you want to be able to look at. There's a title, the x-axis label, the y-axis label, and then sometimes there's also going to be a key. So this is a simple version of this graph that you may see on a standardized test, more likely like an 8th grade science test, but standardized tests are pretty consistent. The first thing, the title, it says up here, plants for sun and shade. If my question that I've read is how long does it take for a bear to come out of hibernation, and I can just go through and look at the titles of 4 different graphs that they've given me. I look at the title on this one and I move on, okay? Use these 4 parts of the graph to help you analyze the information that you need. The second thing that I mentioned was the x-axis and the y-axis. So the x-axis is horizontal, and in this case the label says sun exposure, and the y-axis says growth rate, okay? When we go through at the beginning of the year and we review the scientific method, there's some terms that we talk about with independent and dependent variables. A lot of standardized tests will ask you to find an independent and a dependent variable. The independent variable is the one thing that I change as the scientist, and the dependent variable depends on that, or it's the measured result that we find because of that change. They're always going to put your independent variable down here on the x-axis, okay? If I change the amount of sun exposure, how does it grow? Okay, that's another way to look at it. A good way to put it is almost like a hypothesis, an if-then statement. If this happens, then this happens, okay? This is what I put in. These are my results that I get out of there. So that's another part of the graph that will help you interpret the information that you need to answer a question that's given to you. And then the final thing is using this key at the bottom. If I give this graph to somebody really young, a kindergartner, and I say, tell me what the difference in the graph is, the first thing that they're going to notice is that the bars have different colors probably. You need a key to explain why that's happening. If there's no key at the bottom, I can't interpret it either. So you have to look at the key and see what it is that they're giving you. The only thing that's a disadvantage about this particular example is it doesn't have units in the labels on the axes. So typically when it would say sun exposure here in parentheses, I'm going to make my students put, what are they measuring? Is it in days? Is it in hours? Is it in minutes? You need a unit that goes with that. Same thing with growth rate. I'm going to assume that this is a percent, but I would put a parentheses here. Anything that's going to be in parentheses behind these labels is typically going to be the unit that they're measuring things in. Another type of visual that you may see on a standardized test would be a table. For the tables, instead of looking at an x-axis and a y-axis, you're going to look at the rows and the columns. Look at the headings and see what we can come up with. I don't like this table for the fact that it doesn't have a title, but maybe what they're doing, you have to see it in scope of the question, is comparing this table to other tables. I can look at this, go across the rows, kind of think like the periodic table. It has periods that go across and columns that go up and down. There should be some similarities or trends that we're looking for. With all of the visuals, you want to try and find trends that are going on. So here I can see that this is length, and they've used the unit here, M. Everything in standardized tests should probably be in the metric system. So this M is going to stand for a meter. And then shadow direction, it's giving me a compass direction. I can look above that and see it's day 1, day 2, day 3. So without seeing a question, I know that I am comparing the length of shadows over 3 different days. It's like looking at the labels on the X and the Y axis. Use those labels to your advantage. I don't know what objects A, B, C, D, and E are. I don't know if it's the same object and I changed its position. I don't know if it's 5 different objects, but that information hopefully is given to you somewhere in the realm of the question. If you need more information, then you go to the passage, but always start with that visual. The last visual that I wanted to show you is one that you don't see very often. I think you'll see it more often on standardized tests than you'll probably see it in the classroom, but it's called a scatter plot. And the idea with the scatter plot is I'm going to try and take as many samples as I can to come up with an average. Most of the time when you look at a scatter plot, this blue line is not here. It's just all these black dots. And again, this one doesn't have any labels on the axis. I don't know what it is, but the reason I chose to put this one in the presentation today is you're looking for trends in all of these examples. What trend do you see? And so if this blue line is there, great. If it's not, then you need to come up with what trend do I see? So all I can notice from this scatter plot is as this axis increases, the y-axis is decreasing, okay? There's an overall trend that goes down. A lot of my students are pretty good with graphs as far as looking for trends. And so whatever is happening here, it's decreasing. As I increase this, this is decreasing, okay? I see this overall trend as it goes through. And in my mind, it's like something over time probably. As time increases, I lose something, okay? But there's a trend that you're looking for in all of these charts. You want to try and find a trend. All right, so now if we go back to the third type of question where there's no visual aids, now what do I do? So when you go to your standardized test, find all the questions with visuals and do all of those first. Like completely skip the ones that don't have visuals that go with them. When I go back to my visual or non-visual questions, you have these passage-only questions. Read the question before you read the passage. My students are really good at doing this in class assignments, and I think they panic a little bit on standardized tests and they don't do what they're used to doing. If I give a worksheet to students, I'll say, read this and then answer these questions. And what are my students going to do? They're going to go straight to the questions and then they're going to look for the answers in the reading. That's what you need to do here. You're applying the same idea. If I know what the question is asking ahead of time, then I can scan a little bit more quickly. The passages in science questions on standardized tests usually are quite lengthy. And so if I can just kind of sort out what it is I need out of that question, it will be a help. So read the question, find out what it is that they want to know. Go right to it and look for that in your reading. Skim until you find what you're looking for. So this question right here, it says, which of the following best describes how two scientists explain how craters are removed from Europa's surface? As a regular student taking this test, I don't need to know what Europa is. I probably need to know what a crater is before I come in here and that the craters are being removed. So now I can go back to my reading, but I would first look through my choices in the multiple choice section because it's all multiple choice. You'll notice here that there's two scientists for every answer. So you need to find out what both scientists believe is happening with these craters. How are they removing? And if I go through all these answers, I can see that there's only really three choices. They're being removed by sublimation, they're being removed by being filled with water, or I can drop down here, they're being removed because they're worn smooth by the wind. I don't even need to know what sublimation is at this point, because if you go back to the readings, a lot of times they're going to tell you in the reading what sublimation was. I just need to know if one of these scientists believes that that's what's removing the craters from Europa, okay? And so you just go back into your reading, and I'm looking for the word sublimation, filled by water, or worn smooth by wind. And then I can come back here and answer my question, okay? So this third suggestion that I have when taking a standardized test like the ACT is that you want to write a very small summary of what the conflicting viewpoints are, like in the margins. This is what I believe. So on the previous question, I would find scientist 1 and I would write on the side sublimation, and I would find scientist 2 and write down worn by wind, whatever it is that they believe, so that if it comes up again in another question, now I already have that scouted out. I don't have to find it again, okay? But they need to be brief. You're not writing out sentence summaries of this. This is like cliff notes of whatever the passage says, as quick as you can go through there. So a lot of times, if you're more mathy like myself, you like the graph and tables section, and the reading is kind of, I'm nervous, what if I don't know some of the vocabulary? Well, a lot of times the vocabulary is already in the passage, but if there's no graphs, there's no problems. What you're going to do is look for differences between the scientist's opinion. So if there's scientist 1 and scientist 2, what is it? You don't really need that they're doing in common, but how are they different? So if scientist 1 and scientist 2 both have apples, I need to go through the passage and read, how are the apples different? Maybe it's red and maybe it's green. And that's a simple difference that I can apply to whatever questions are coming. But you just write on the side, green, red. Don't write out, well, I found out that. Okay, it's not a journal entry. It's just notes over what you're doing. Okay. Sometimes they're a little bit more like this. Instead of looking at apples, you need to find the differences between the picture on the left and the picture on the right. They're not going to have Mario and Luigi on your ACT. But the idea is these are a little bit more difficult to find the differences between them. That's really the higher you go in testing, from the 8th grade science test up to the ACT, it's going to get a little bit more difficult. But look for those subtle differences and apply them to what you're doing. Okay? All right, so in this reading, I'm not going to expect you to be able to read this from where you're at, but I'm going to read the first sentence of each one. This is Scientist 1 and this is Scientist 2. Scientist 1 says the object was a comet, a body made of ices such as frozen water or methane and dust. So the reason I'm pointing this out to you is Scientist 2 says the object was a stony asteroid. So the Cliff Note version of this, the little notes that they put in the side, is that Scientist 1 believes it's a comet and Scientist 2 believes it's an asteroid, for whatever the question is about to ask. What I also wanted to point out to you is I probably don't remember the difference between an asteroid and a comet. These standardized tests are going to tell you, okay? The asteroid was stony, so it's a rock, versus the comet, which is made of ice and dust. They're giving you a lot of information in these passages. So to relieve a little vocabulary anxiety, they don't expect you to be an expert. They want you to look for the subtle differences that are available. So Scientist 1 thinks it's a comet. Scientist 2 thinks it's an asteroid. The question that goes with this says, which of the following findings support Scientist 2? So if you've read all of that first, then you go to the question, then you have to bounce back to the reading again and figure out what it is that the difference is that you're looking for. It's not as efficient as if I started by reading the question and then jump over to look for those differences. So in each one of these, we're only carrying what Scientist 2 said, okay? So just to back up the bus for a second, Scientist 2 said it was an asteroid. So when I look at this, letter A says a scientist confirmed that the fragments were formed from an asteroid. I like it. Let's move on. Don't do that, okay? Read the rest of these, because another one may say something about an asteroid in it and be more correct. That's the one that always kind of makes me nervous, is that there's correct and then there's more correct. Look for as many details that are accurate in the answer to make sure that you're getting the right one. So we like A. Scientist confirms that the fragments were from a comet. No, because we only care about Scientist 2. That's what Scientist 1 said. A scientist determined nothing struck the Earth. No, he said that there was a crater there. He gave us an asteroid. And scientists found that a bomb exploded. Okay, so yes, scientists up here, letter A, confirmed that the fragments were from an asteroid is really our best choice. But you need to go through and make sure that those are all invalid, B, C, and D, before you go through and you say, go for A. Okay? All right. Section 4, strategy number 4, is probably the one I would use after I've tested. You can request your test questions and results after you've taken the ACT and see where are you stronger and where are you weaker. And when you go through that science portion of the ACT, again, they're not going to expect you to be experts, but there's some general vocabulary that they're going to want you to know. So reviewing general science topics before you take the next test would be an advantage to you. Find the ones that you're weaker in and really learn them. In order to be a physical science teacher here at Sequoyah, I had to take a physical science teaching test. And when I did that, I went through and I studied different concepts. The ones I felt the weakest in, I hit a couple times before I went to take the test. I want you to do the same thing. So there's 3 main sections to the ACT as far as content. But remember, they do not want you to be an expert when you walk in there in science. This is supposed to be a whole test over science, math, and English. Science is just a portion of it. They want you to be able to analyze what's happening in each one of these sections. It says most information needed is in the passage. Just like the question I showed you a minute ago, the difference between a comet and an asteroid was in the reading. You didn't have to have it memorized already. They gave that to you, okay? So in the content portion of the ACT, they're going to break it down into biological sciences and physical sciences. Those are the two main sections. And that's what our state test looks like as well. 50% of it is a biology test, and 50% of it is a physical science test. And then the two parts of physical science is chemistry and physics. And when you look at the topics that they suggest, you have a general knowledge of before you go in there. The fun thing to me is that throughout the last 4 or 5 weeks, we as science teachers have kind of been talking about these things with you. So as far as the biology is concerned, we talked about cellular biology and the structures of a cell the very first week I was here with the strawberry lab, and we looked at the DNA that was inside of it. Last week, I taught genetics, so we gave you a general introduction to genetics. If you felt comfortable with the vocabulary that I was using, you're probably on target and you're fine. If you were thinking, okay, as far as cellular biology, I was good to go, but genetics, I was a little bit weaker in, get a hold of a biology book, do a little bit of reading, or go to your biology teacher. Mr. Llewellyn will help you with any of these things, as will any of the other science teachers. We also talked about taxonomic rank. It was classification. So when I did the invertebrate lab and Mr. Paul did his frog lab, we talked about how we classify animals. That's domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Natural selection is what features do animals have and why do they have them? Why is it an advantage? Why has nature selected these features in order to help them survive better in their environment? The only two that we didn't get to, and it's only because we ran out of time, is greenhouse gases and photosynthesis and respiration. A general knowledge of those would really help you as far as the biology portion of the ACT. As far as physical science with chemistry, I think we did a pretty good job with this. Most of the time, we can talk about freezing and boiling point of water. Notice it's in Celsius because we want the metric system. Mr. Paul did a lab on Tuesday that was with dry ice, and he actually included this pH scale. He did the red cabbage lab, which was put some acid in here. What happens to this indicator? You'll see the red cabbage lab in some of these scientific standardized tests. It's a great option. Basic molecule structure, molecular mass, and how charges interact and phase changes. I know Mr. Paul did phase changes as well. The last portion of the physical science part of the test is physics. Not as much physics, but again, if you go back to what we've been looking at, Mr. Harshfield ended his lesson last week with the density formula. He said density is equal to mass divided by volume. And he had those two black spheres, and he would drop them. And one would bounce and the other one would land flat. And what was the difference? And he kept telling you, I've already measured their density. It's the same, and I can show it to you. And then he gave you the formula. Mass, so he put them on a scale and weighed them and divided it by their volume, how much space they took up when he did water displacement. It was the same. So you had to come up with other differences that were causing it. But density formula, we talked about. Mr. Paul, again, did a density tower for you. He created one and showed you how they're created and then explained why they work that way. Kinetic and potential energy was literally the name of his lesson last week. So all of these things, the level that they were given to you, if you feel comfortable from what we've done on RSU TV, I really think that you're going to shine and you'll do well. They're not expecting you to memorize the density of milk and then compare it to the density of vegetable oil. They'll give you a visual, or they'll create a passage that says, scientists discovered the density of milk was this, and the vegetable oil was this, and then you tell them what would happen in this tower. Could be a great question that they would ask. So all of those things go together. All right, last practice. You have to take a couple practice tests before you go in and take the ACT. I really always think we have practice for football before we have games. So why would you not practice the ACT before you go in and take it? So if my goals as a cheer coach are to have 8 scorpions in the air, I don't just throw girls in the air. We practice on the ground first, okay? Everything that you can practice beforehand is just going to make you so much more comfortable in that 35-minute setting. It doesn't feel like a lot of time, but it can be if you know how to efficiently work through there and you've seen practice problems, you know what to expect. And if you do those practice problems and you're still not really sure what's going on, again, bring them into your teachers. We love to help. Okay, it's why we get paid the big bucks. So, no, Karen, one practice test is not enough. You can't just take one and then go right into the ACT and feel like you're comfortable enough. Take a couple. Okay, there's a website, act.org, and they have practice questions on there for you. Use them. Okay, so if your goal is to look like this when you check your ACT score, you need to practice. But I would highly suggest you take timed practices. If the the ACT is 35 minutes, set up your practice with 2 timers, a 30-minute timer and a 35-minute timer, because they'll give you a 5 minutes, we're going to be done time. And what's great about that is now you know how quickly you need to move through questions and do it a couple times. Okay, so this is just kind of a recap. If you have any questions or suggestions to make this better, I always appreciate those. You can go to my email, which is just stephaniekehler@sequoiaeagles.net, and send me some suggestions or questions. I hope that you guys have a great summer. We miss you, and I'm excited to see you again in the fall.